cannot live in a society where we allow them to intimidate people
Yeah.
into silence. That is why we're doing this podcast. That is why we're trying to self-police our own side of the political spectrum as we interpret it, because without this self-policing, you end up getting policed by the right. And if we can't police ourselves, we can't then police the right. We will never be able to hold them accountable for their crimes against the law. We will never be able to hold them accountable for their crimes against the Constitution. Some of them have crimes against humanity that they need to answer for. We can never do that until we are a united front when it comes to who do we allow into our own side of the political spectrum.
This is Profiles in Cowardice, episode 2 of this series. We started out with Debbie Wasserman Schultz, and now we'll be taking on our first journalist, Jake Tapper.
Calling Jake Tapper a journalist is high praise.
Very, very. Any initial thoughts before we dive into this?
Yes, framing the full episode, there's a reason that we are criticizing people who might be viewed as on the left of center side of the spectrum. Because as much as we want to criticize failures of journalism and criticize failures in legislative work done by politicians and journalists alike, what we would like to do even more is repaint what the middle of the political spectrum looks like. If you find yourself supporting, Tom fucking Tillis and Pam fucking Bondi and all of these, and obviously Donald Trump, you are not like a moderate. If you were like, well, I don't like what they're doing, but I like how they're doing this in the economy, or you're not a moderate. There is nothing moderate about supporting an individual in Trump, but also an infrastructure in the people that have decided to hitch their wagons to that train. There's nothing moderate about that. There's no moderating voices in the movement. There's no moderating behavior when it comes to foreign policy, when it comes to local legislation, when it comes to civil liberties or rights, when it comes to education. There's no moderation in anything that they do. So you don't get to call yourself a moderate just because you don't like to say, well, I'm a right-wing extremist. It doesn't matter. You are a right-wing extremist if you have supported right-wing extremists.
Yeah.
It's like the expression where it's like 9 Nazis sit down at a table with you. How many Nazis are at the table? 10. Motherfucker, you get up, or you push them off the table, or you choke them unconscious one by one. Whatever you have to do. You don't sit at a table with Nazis and act like you're not a fucking Nazi.
Yeah.
So part of what we would like to do with these profiles in cowardice, and the reason that we're criticizing people on the left, which none of these people truly are, is because there's no semblance of what the middle looks like anymore. There's no semblance of what a moderating voice looks like. The right wing has been incredibly consistent and incredibly successful at essentially shouting from the rooftops enough that people like Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are communist, socialist, Marxist fascists, I guess, is what they call them. They've turned these words that have meanings into rallying cries, where it's like, oh, well, yeah, you wouldn't know anything about gun rights. You're a Marxist, communist, fascist, or you're a left-wing maniac. It's like, well, yeah, from your perspective, anything further to the right of even, or to the left of even the middle, from the standpoint of right-wing extremism, is going to seem pretty far left. But the reality is our criticisms of these people will be coming from the left predominantly. So I'm further down the spectrum than Jake Tapper, and I'm further down the spectrum for sure than Debbie Wasserman Schultz. And being able to self-police and criticize the people who claim to be on your team is a more effective strategy for winning the fight against the other team than being like, hey, listen, I know we've got people on our team that haven't gotten a hit in 3 seasons, and they make an error every time the ball comes their way, and they are bad for team chemistry, and they don't get along with the coach, and they don't know the rules of the game. But getting those people that are on your team supposedly to behave properly and to do their jobs properly is infinitely more important, in my opinion and in my estimation, than criticizing people on the right. There's plenty of criticism for people on the right. They're almost without exception fully cowards. Many of them are traitors to the country and to the Constitution, and the vast majority of them are just bad people, even in their own interpersonal lives. So providing tons of criticism to the right isn't really what we're interested in here. What we're interested in is providing a zoom out of the political spectrum to show you the sort of gradation between right wing extremism, being right wing,
Yeah.
which is what exists now on like CBS, being somewhat of a moderate in the middle with a tempering voice and with varying opinions depending on what the issue is, to over to being like a liberal, just still a pretty far right ideology on the world stage, all the way over to being a leftist. And there are gradations within being a leftist as well. So the criticism of Jake Tapper, which is legitimate and of which there is plenty, isn't to say, oh, wow, he's a fucking lefty lib that doesn't know his ass from a hole in the ground. The criticism for Jake Tapper is he's a fucking neutral party in an ideological war where one side wants to strip children from their families, kill people, jail journalists, restrict people from coming into our country based on the color of their skin, allow people to purchase green cards and citizenship based on their economic status elsewhere, ruin our education system, probably ruin our economy, and if not ruin our economy, put the economy into the hands of 7 different companies, ruin our ecosystem and our wildlands, and the most divisive group of politicians since the Civil War. So he's chosen in this situation, in these circumstances, to do his version of neutrality journalism, which, like I was saying, you sit down at the table with 9 Nazis. I don't really give a fuck if you're a Nazi or not. I'm
Right.
throwing the flashbang onto the top of the table.
Mm. That's kind of like when you're talking about the like the sort of this expose we're doing on the spectrum of where you lie politically. It's kind of like that proverb of which is fitting considering we're talking about sort of right wings or Republican. It's kind of like that proverb of a lot of these centrists are and supposed leftists or Democrats are standing too close to the elephant, you know, and we're just here to tell them to like take a step back and you can see how fucking big this thing is because it does kind of encapsulate a lot more than a lot of these people expect.
I mean, even this week, Jake Tapper was on with Kristi Noem, and people are praising him. People are like, he really pushed back against her nonsense. He's doing the Lord's work. Motherfucker, if you aren't calling for her to her face to resign, if you aren't calling her an accessory to murder, then I don't want to fucking hear your voice. You have no business informing my country on what's going on.
Yeah,
I mean, and this is just not even taking into consideration his past failings as a journalist,
right,
which we'll get
right.
to. But like he's on there giving her like slight pushback questions where it's like, well, but this fact flies directly into the face of what you just said. How can both
Yeah,
things be true? Motherfucker, she doesn't care if it's true. She doesn't care. She does not give a fuck if it's true. She doesn't care if it's rooted in reality. She is part of a propaganda machine. That's why
yeah,
she's in the role. She's not in the role because she's an experienced law enforcement officer, because she's an experienced federal agent. She's not in the role because of any of that. She's in the role because if she said, I will do whatever you tell me to do, like a good little secretary of whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, yeah,
or head of whatever agency. She's there because she is a fucking sycophant loyalist, which is why everyone that's there is there. That's the fucking problem. And if you can't get past the details of one little issue and criticize her on the whole for what the problem is, which is that she's participating in, we have to say it as it is, a fascist, authoritarian regime that's hell bent on ruining our nation one way or another. And she is the tip of the spear for some of the most racist implementation of immigration policy that we've seen since World War II. You know what I mean? Like, if you're not going to sit at the desk next to her and say that, nobody should give a solitary fuck what Jake Tapper thinks.
right,
He's
right.
just there doing milk toast journalism, and doing milk toast journalism in a time like this is capitulating to the authoritarian state.
And having said that, you know, his journalist career that a lot of people supposedly know him by is this sort of truth teller, tough as nails guy who holds both sides accountable.
Is that how
And
you
then,
think
like
people
when
see
you
Jake
just said,
Tapper?
that's how certain people see Jake Tapper.
I can see
They
that.
your standard sort of liberal Democrats, I think they see Jake Tapper as this guy who holds people accountable,
Yeah.
apparently.
Well, what we should do then, because I actually believe you on that, and I think that that's probably true. Something we should mention then is that your average liberal Democrat is a giant pussy. They put those hats on in 2016 and they never took them off. If you find yourself having ideas that align, legislative or political or ideological, if you align with people on like the actual left ever, what you will find is that liberal Democrats are almost as much of your enemy as Republicans. There is almost nothing worse for progress than a liberal Democrat. So I'm thinking the Barack Obamas and Hillary Clintons of the world are a larger hurdle to success as a leftist, which I consider myself sort of a leftist. Like, there are a few issues where I've always been leaning to the right. There are a few issues where I believe ideologically in the left, but I may believe legislatively in the right side of the spectrum's interpretation of the Constitution, maybe, or something like that. But ideologically and with what my large scale sort of beliefs are, I fancy myself a bit of a leftist.
Yeah.
And the biggest issue for us as a group of individuals is that the liberals would rather lose and have Republicans in charge than win and have progressives in charge. And you can take that check, you can sign the back of it, walk into the bank, and you can cash that motherfucker, because I promise you that's true. And you can go back and look and see it all the times that it was true, but you don't even have to do that. You can just remember what I said, and you can go forward knowing that the liberals would rather lose to the Republicans than win with the progressives. There's another motherfucker, Slotkin, up there on Capitol Hill doing the fucking liberal lord's work
You
up
know,
there, saying that they need to just train ICE agents more properly. Motherfucker, the guy that shot that lady had been an ICE agent for 9 years.
yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not like some green dude coming off. It's what they want. They have Nazi tattoos. People are just repeatedly finding Nazi tattoos on these motherfuckers, on their goddamn necks, on their arms, on their chests. They're just finding Nazi tattoos all over ICE.
Yeah.
That's not a fucking coincidence. That's not just
We
like something
were
that accidentally happens. That's a
we were
failure of
led to
vetting.
believe that things like that would automatically disqualify you from any position of power. So, where did that guardrail go? Let's talk about his.
But you just want me to start screaming at the camera now. We're just going to start with that. Yeah,
Yeah.
let's do it. This is how you piss someone off right here. This is how you fucking piss someone the fuck off.
So Jake
Paint the
Tapper.
stage. Tell us before you tell us about his book.
Yeah.
Tell us what happened in 2024. Who won, who lost, and what the prevailing reasons why are.
Okay.
Because this context will paint Jake Tapper on its own. We don't have to paint him ourselves. He's painted himself with his fucking cowardice decision making.
Oh yeah.
It's sickening.
Well, how far should we go even further back
Go
to
to
lead up to this,
2020.
or just
Go to 2020. Give us a brief rundown of the Biden administration and what he was being criticized for by who.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, Biden beat Trump 2020. Biden became president, and people like Jake Tapper, and mostly him, supposedly is this, middle of the road, kind of covering all sides of it, would often be a defender of Biden's actions, as we were slowly, some people slowly seeing this decline, more of a rapid decline of Biden's cognitive functions. He was getting criticized a whole lot during his entire administration, even before that, during the campaign and everything. He's this old dude. He's so fucking old. Biden's old.
Yeah.
Both of them are old.
But Biden acts old. Biden was obviously losing. People would be like, oh yeah, he's lost a step since the 2012 debate. He lost a step?
Yeah.
In 12 years, you think he lost a step? It was humiliating. He humiliated us on the world stage for 4 years. And what was the media doing to normal people like us when we complained about it?
They were gaslighting. They were painting a different truth that not only was he
we can't keep up.
Not only was he not ridden with dementia, he was sharp.
We can't even keep up in these private meetings. He's running circles around us. I don't know how the man does it.
They could not stop
and no one bought it. No
Yeah.
one. No one believed it. For 4 years, no one fucking believed it. But they kept gaslighting us, making us seem like we were
Yes.
ageist, making us seem like we were crazy, like
It
we
was
were
so
paranoid.
cringy how obvious it was,
It was
and
bad. It was
it was
disgusting.
terrible. So, Jake Tapper being one of the big sort of defenders in talking about his cognitive abilities would constantly argue and defend and talk to other politicians and people on the show about his cognitive decline, and would keep gaslighting, keep defending, saying things were taken out of context, or would say that that doesn't paint who Biden is fully, and would kind of jump around the issue. The supposed tough as nails reporter, and then we had the 2024. So Trump won, obviously, because
Wait, wait,
Biden,
but how could a rapist, insurrectionist, loser
yeah,
convince people
yeah,
to not vote for Kamala or to vote
yeah.
for him? How could he possibly have
Biden
done that?
Biden got so bad that they decided to switch gears and thrust Kamala in.
Wait, they were trying to run Biden. They were
Yeah.
again?
So they put Biden up as the nominee, and they were so behind him, and they were like, this guy's sharp, he's amazing, he's gonna win. Literally, like milliseconds after the decision, they were like, yeah, no, he's not our guy, Kamala's better. Maybe that wasn't a good move.
What was the catalyst for change in the Democrats putting Biden up? It must have been that the public outcry was so against him and that we wanted a real primary opportunity, right? They were succumbing to the will of their Democratic voters, right? Or was it the fucking debate where he
Yeah.
humiliated the entire country and party? Everyone who had ever defended him, anyone who had ever even made a remark against Trump,
Yes.
was made to look a fool during that debate because he was so inept, so inadequate as a man. He couldn't even stand on the stage and answer basic questions. For the first time in his life, Donald Trump said, you know what? I think I'll shut the fuck up and let him talk because that's the best thing I can do right now. When have you ever seen Trump shut up? But he was like, I'm gonna let him talk because Biden was humiliating himself. And through humiliating himself, because of what had happened with COVID and because of how we had to get behind someone that no one liked in the first place in Joe Biden, no one wanted him, but we had to because we were afraid from COVID.
And for extra perspective on that debate, even up to that point, that was Trump's worst performance. And
Yeah, he's terrible.
he still got overshadowed by an enormous.
Yeah. Trump is a terrible debater. I mean, he's horrible. He's good. He's
He's
good at
terrible. Yeah.
making fun of
His
people and stuff. But
his
if somebody
only
with a
game
spine,
is insulting and lying.
yeah,
Those are
but
his two weapons.
if a bigger bully debated him, he would shrivel because he's an idiot.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
these guys are like very good with when the bravado is working. The moment that the bravado doesn't hit someone, the moment that someone has facts to back up their claims and isn't afraid to be mean back is when it changes. Hillary Clinton thought that decorum politics were going to save her. That's because she's disconnected. Anybody with half a fucking brain that went in there and said, you know what, I don't care about decorum politics. I'll go as low as you go, and I'm just going to use facts and information to back up my claims where you can't. Trump can't access information quickly. He has a terrible vocabulary. He misspeaks constantly. I don't even know if he can speak properly. He misspeaks so frequently. He has no prior knowledge about foreign or national policy. He doesn't have any information about the healthcare system. He knows nothing about public transit. He knows nothing about the ecosystem and environment. He knows nothing about other countries and their leaders. He knows nothing about other countries and their voters. He doesn't know the American voter. He knows is grievance politics. And once you can acknowledge the grievance politics and say, like, you can basically take those grievances and completely put that fire out in a debate because there are grievances that people have that are true and real. And you can acknowledge those and then say, yeah, you can be upset about certain aspects of our economy and you're blaming the wrong person. But nobody like that's ever debated him. The fact that the day before Biden went on, everyone was nervous. I was in fucking YouTube comment sections reading them. I was on Instagram reading comment sections.
Yeah.
People like David Pakman and everything. Like these people, Democrats, were terrified because we could all see with our own eyes. We could all hear with our own
Yeah.
ears. And if we were around Biden, we would have been able to smell his full diapers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like we would have been able to use all of our senses to say, this guy's not in a condition to run for president. But the Democrats didn't and don't, they still don't care about their voters. They care
No.
about their donors. The donor
Yeah.
class wanted Biden because Biden was doing what? He had members of his cabinet and members of his close inner circle basically legislating for him. And if you are not the president, but the president tasks you with something, you're going to listen to the advisors from the corporations that run those sort of sectors, you know,
When you
and that's
have
exactly what they did.
you have somebody like Biden who can't, like, you know, is like one step away from a vegetable. You have everybody who's around him who's running the show, basically.
Exactly.
He
And the Democrats love that.
he was just a figurehead.
The Democratic Party loves that.
But so that shit show happened, and then they put up Kamala, who we didn't elect
Wait, what
for
do
a
you mean they
nomination.
put up Kamala? The Democratic voters voted for her up against a field of other primary candidates? Is that
Nope.
what you mean?
Nope, not at all. Nope. No opponents, no campaign, no nothing. She was thrusted to the front as the official nominee, period.
Wow.
No debate, no nothing.
That's unbelievable. It's
They did
almost
that so quick.
That almost sounds anti-democratic.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
Kind of like what they did with Biden in 2020, having all of the other people drop out in the same day. Kind of like what they did with Clinton, working with the media in 2016, keeping Bernie Sanders' name from gaining recognition without disparity.
Yeah. Like
Like
Debbie
they were
Wasserman
putting up
Schultz.
polls where Sanders was like the number 1 or number 2 candidate in certain places. They were putting the poll numbers up on screen without a photo of Bernie Sanders. Like they did the shit repeatedly in 2016. The Democratic Party has not been a party for the voters, I mean, for a very long time, but mechanically since Citizens United. Once the corporations were allowed to donate to campaigns, the Democrats abandoned their voters and they went straight in on the corporations.
So before we like officially dive into the book, here's a little compilation I wanted to throw up here real quick.
This is gonna piss me off, isn't it?
Luckily, somebody was able to cultivate this for me. Shout out to Washington Free Beacon for this video. Not anything they do. I have no clue what they do on their channel.
Yeah.
But just this video.
We just endorse them 100%. Anything they put out for the next 10 years, we like.
Last December, when he was promoting his book, he said, quote, "I am a gaffe machine, but my God, what a wonderful thing compared to a guy who can't tell the truth," comparing himself to President Trump. And there is this overlay of, well, Joe Biden said this, but you know what he meant. Look at what President Trump says, which, I mean, he seemed to be suggesting that Joe Biden wasn't all there and had forgotten something he had said. Given all the attacks coming from the Trump campaign, alleging all sorts of things about Biden's mental acuity, his capability, fair or not, and frankly, hypocritical or not. A cognitive decline.
Well, when you're trying to tell me that what I was suggesting was
I think that you were mocking his stutter.
Yeah,
I think you were mocking his stutter, and I think, hey, you're leading us and him into a disaster, and you damn well know it. I mean, how seriously can anybody take your... Okay, so Democratic voters didn't buy it, but what about independents and Republicans? Did you damage President Biden at all? Puppet fool and also this criminal mastermind. It just seems like you got to pick a lane here. He certainly seemed like an 81-year-old, but he did not seem incapable of doing the job. He's 81, and his memory, you know, it doesn't seem great. It's not horrible, but I don't understand the outrage. Calling it a cover-up, it's pretty strong words. Are you suggesting that there's something that needs to be investigated in a serious way?
I'll stop it there for now.
This motherfucker.
It's been doing this for years.
This is what he was saying publicly.
Yeah.
And you know how fucking stupid you have to be to make Laura Trump look like she's making sense?
Yeah.
Do you know how fucking irresponsible that is for someone to have someone who you could easily bring on, display how fucking ignorant and heinous they are as an individual and as a member of a political movement, and say, okay, cool, crushed that one, mush, 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 squish them like an ideological ant and move on to the next one. And instead, he brings her on and makes her look like a juggernaut because she's telling the truth and he's in denial. That is how you lose elections. That is how you lose the country. I swear to fucking God, I swear to God, if I ever saw Jake Tapper in person, I would scream into his face at the top of my fucking lungs. They would have to physically remove me from the restaurant. Like, I hate this motherfucker with a searing rage. I can't fucking, and you know what's even crazier is the motherfucker's getting paid to lie while Joe Biden is president, while Joe Biden is running for president, while Joe Biden is running for president again. He's getting paid by the news agency to say one thing. Well, those are big words. That's a big claim. A cover-up, you say? A cover-up, you say? Should something be investigated? And the entire time, as the book goes on to tell you, while he's being paid to defend Joe Biden, he's actively in connection with sources that are telling him how bad it is in the Biden campaign. And he says, well, I'll hold off on that knowledge while I get paid to lie, and then I'll tell the truth in a book after the dust settles. After we've lost the republic to a con artist, I'll tell the truth in a book after the fact. Jail. Buddy, put that motherfucker behind bars. You fucking helped us lose the fucking republic to a con artist by being dishonest with your fucking audience. Fucking jail, dude. Fuck that guy. God damn. Yeah. These motherfuckers, you know how easy it could have been if we had, imagine we had fucking 30 million illiterate dumb fucks on the right instead of 80 million. You know how much better our country would be right now? Had we just, imagine if the Democrats had let us actually have a fucking primary, That Dean guy, I think his name is Dean Smith, that was running against Biden. He was in one of these Jake Tapper interviews, and Tapper was giving him a hard time over shit that he said. He ran in 2024.
Dean Phillips.
Yeah. If Dean Phillips had, I don't even know very much about Dean Phillips, but he's 30 years younger than Biden. He has a good reputation from a purple state. And just imagine if we would have been able to hear him out, honestly, rather than having him go on and Jake Tapper be harder on him than he is on our fucking delinquent president. You know what I mean? Like, just imagine if Bernie Sanders had been given a fair wag in 2016, how easily he would have defeated Hillary Clinton because of how universally hated she is. How easily he would have been able to bring over moderate young men instead of pushing them away during the Trump administration. How easily the Republicans would have lost in 2016 had we just been given a fair primary. How easily could we have defeated Trump this last time? Had they not, you're telling us that this guy who is obviously anti-democratic, he doesn't believe in really even elections. He's denied the obvious judge rulings on the last election. You're telling us that you want to defeat authoritarianism. You want to save democracy by defeating Trump. And then you don't let us vote in a primary for who we get to elect. That isn't democracy. Just telling us we get one option versus an authoritarian is not democracy. And just imagine how easy it would have been had the Democrats not been full of people like Jake Tapper. Because Jake Tapper is a journalist, but there's a million lawyers that think like that, business owners that think like that, people in the political infrastructure as well, but just normal people that make good money that think like Jake Tapper. They're just fucking spineless cowards that refuse to acknowledge the severity of the situation because it does not yet impact them.
So he, in 2025, released this book called Original Sin, President Biden's Decline, Its Cover-Up, and Its Disastrous Choice to Run Again. That's the whole title. He's part of the cover-up. That's the whole title of his book. He co-authored it with Alex
It should be
Thompson.
Original Sin, How I Helped the Biden Administration cover up the president's decline.
As the title suggests, pretty obviously presents an autopsy of the 2024 election and Biden's decline.
Original Sin, How I Lost Us the Election, single-handedly.
When we're talking about this book now, this serves as the centerpiece of this episode because it represents the complete sort of reversal hypocrisy of Tapper's previous journalistic stances as we watched, pivoting from that protector of administration to then high profile whistleblower of all its secrets. I wouldn't exactly call that journalistic integrity.
That's a dude jumping off the ship as the last bits of it go into the water. He jumps off and starts swimming. I was never on that fucking boat.
I mean, I would normally say the audacity for people like him to just do that and pretend like we wouldn't for like that we'd forget or not realize what's happening. But as we constantly talk about with the people in the state of this country and our population, he's not really showing much, there's not a lot to be said because that's pretty easy thing to do in this day and age. You could just pretend like that never happened, just deny and lie, and everybody will just move on or just won't think about it, don't bring it up, or they're just too stupid to realize. So in actuality, I mean, what he did was just a regular, not like a modern political move, which, to anybody with a brain cell could see was a ridiculous act of cowardice and betrayal of our trust in
And he helped
media.
us lose an election.
Yeah.
Anyone on, I'm not even going to say the left, anybody that sort of leans towards the Democrats at this point that wasn't criticizing Biden vehemently, it helped us lose,
Yeah.
because
If
had
we
we,
had been criticizing way sooner, way sooner, well into Biden's administration, we could have been setting up for something better.
exactly,
And
exactly,
instead we lied. They lied. They gaslit, and they said
pushed
that
voters away.
not only is he not doing bad, he's doing amazing. Immediately threw him off the table after that debate, thrusted Kamala as the nominee without any of our input democratically. And then now you jump to Trump 2024 and just the state of what's going on right now. This is just one of the dozens of little puzzle pieces that's been happening, on this side of the spectrum, which is why we're covering these things.
We have to self-police or we will continue to
Yes,
lose elections.
exactly.
If we
So,
even get a chance to vote again. I mean, we're looking at a true authoritarian regime. Truly, the guy in charge is actually saying things like, well, I don't even know if we need to have an election. Like,
right.
and a lot of people have fucking realized by now that, like, when he says crazy shit, he's not just saying crazy shit. He means it because he's a fucking crazy person. Donald Trump is not stable. The people around him are not stable. He is not well read. He's not knowledgeable. He's frantic, trying to avoid accountability for several different things he's done. So are the people in his administration. So are many of his voters. And they're going to behave as such. So the idea that they would try to cancel or rig elections is not far-fetched at all. We just watched files come out where he's mentioned and accused of raping children. He's implicated in the murder of children in the Epstein files as an
Yeah.
accessory or otherwise. Now, none of this, it's all alleged behavior because of the nature of the files, but they delayed the release of the files, presumably for this reason. So the idea that they would do fishy shit with elections after accusing the Democrats, remember, they will justify their fishy behavior with the elections by blaming the Democrats. They're already taking Georgia ballots into the federal custody. He already held documents at Mar-a-Lago without releasing them when he was supposed to by a court order. There's nothing beyond the pale for this administration. So, like, we may have just in 2024 witnessed our last legitimate opportunity to have a republic, to have a true democracy, or some semblance of one, which, I mean, I guess it was already just some semblance of one since Citizens United. But
Yeah.
that we may have seen the final nail in the coffin for, like, get your vote really doing anything mechanically.
Right. To put a little more context in of this sort of flip-flop that he did with his book. So the book's central argument is that President Biden's decision to seek re-election, despite, private evidence of significant cognitive and physical deterioration, was like a narcissistic and reckless act that, like, essentially handed the president back to Donald Trump, as kind of we were talking about. And then he frames this as not a simple mistake, but it was like this full systemic deception coordinated by what he coined as the Biden Politburo, which, for anybody who doesn't like know what that means, is basically like a policy making body that surrounds this sort of figurehead and really makes, all the political moves or decisions, which we kind of mentioned earlier about the people around Biden. It was like supposedly this sort of communist party term, I think, in origin.
They
But
insulated him.
yes, they,
Decisions.
controlling who speaks to see the president, keeping cabinet members or members of Congress away from him for months at a time, shielding the president from bad news, allegedly concealing the extent of his cognitive decline with from the press and the public.
Jail.
Yeah, running
That's fucking jail shit, dude.
essentially these people are running the executive branch and making all the major strategic decisions in place of Biden.
That's what the 25th Amendment is for?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I believe it's 20, yeah, I think it's 25th Amendment or maybe 23rd, where like the cabinet says, hey, this guy can't make decisions. We have to, in the interest of the
Yeah.
fucking voters, in the interest of the Constitution, and in the interest of the fucking nation we live inside of, we have to remove this guy from office because he's incapable of doing the job. Medical reason, disposition reason, whatever, compromise in some form or variety, it doesn't matter. There exists a circumstance in which he cannot be the president, and these people continued to legislate as the president through that circumstance. Jail.
It's a serious concern that has been brought up in the past with, I forget the particular president.
Trump.
Where, I mean, yeah, like further than that, where actual, cabinet members and people surrounding that president in history really sincerely considered that issue because of an actual decline in his cognitive abilities and physical abilities. It's like a real thing they had to
was
talk
one.
about. Yes, like it's a real smart guardrail that we have to have in case of these situations. But so we're talking about this sort of Tapper's Politburo that he talks about in the book. The core group of these people are 4 longtime Biden loyalists. They though they note like others were involved, but Mike Donnellan, senior advisor, described as an actual political director. Steve Ricchetti,
Jail.
counselor to the president. Bruce Reed, deputy chief of staff for policy. Ron Klain, former chief of staff, who reportedly remained influential.
I'm not going to say what
leaving.
Ron Klain fucking deserves, but
yeah,
jail.
Fuck
him.
Jail.
These motherfuckers lied to the American people about the capacity of the leader of the free world. While a genocide was going on, while a war of aggression was going on in Europe, and while several other serious foreign policy situations existed. That's fucking, I mean, treason has a specific set of like parameters you have to meet to be treasonous, but this is the behavior of a traitor at the least. You know what I mean? This is traitor behavior from these people. These people do not respect the Constitution. They don't respect the flag. They don't respect the nation of people that they lead. And they covered up a serious problem for years from us, and we lost an election likely due to their cover-up. This obviously there's some crazy situation existing in foreign and national policy daily, it seems like, but this is one of those core things that will have ramifications for decades. You know what I mean? Like this isn't just like, oh yeah, they, he was a little bit senile and they didn't tell us. They were making fucking policy decisions for him. They're not the president.
Yeah, the thing that makes this book interesting is that a lot of it is true. A lot of it is true in factual, researched, accurate reporting. The problem is that while these things were happening, there are certain people, at one point in history, we were able to rely on to call this out and to expose what really was going on, and he refused to do that.
Yeah, there's no more fucking Walter Cronkite.
The writing was kind of already on the wall, but he frequently dismissed reports of Biden's decline.
He didn't want to lose his access to the Democratic Party and to the administration.
And now he's just calling it a scandal that he wasn't involved in, but he was covering it up from the very beginning. He was capitalizing. It's like what they call access journalism, maintaining proximity to power by knowing exactly when to stay silent and when to pivot, all for personal profit. or in other instances, gaining power. And that's what he was doing. That's what he was doing before he wrote the book and after. And that's what he continues to do.
Dude, makes me fucking sick, dude. It makes me sick to think about these motherfuckers. This is the supposed left wing. You know what I mean? Like, this is who we have fighting against people who are rabid racists, rabid nationalists, authoritarian sympathizers, authoritarian sycophants, and often actual authoritarians themselves. This is what we have fighting against that. He couldn't even fight against his own guy being delusional, being completely separate from the situation, having a full diaper. He couldn't criticize that. And we expect this to be the class of people that fights effectively against authoritarianism. It just can't happen. It just can't happen. He cannot be thought leader in any thinking that leads to reform. We cannot reform our country with people like Jake Tapper being respected. There is no respect for people like this.
Like, I don't know if this is part of his book or this is maybe something that he had said. This is sort of a paraphrase. So his excuse for missing the story is that the media was too polite. He cites that respect and politeness was why the media didn't press harder on his cognitive decline.
He's out there insulting
one
Dean
of them.
Phillips for saying anything about it. Dean Phillips is bringing it up like, hey, we're watching this happen. And he's like, how should anyone respect you when you're saying things like that? How are you going to be taken seriously when you're saying things like that? That's polite? So you were polite to Biden, but not polite to Dean Phillips. That's what you're saying. Because you're a fucking coward.
Yeah. The
That's
politeness.
why this series is called Profiles in Cowardice. You think people think the media is too polite? Is that our main criticism of our fucking media? Jake Tapper, you fucking insufferable cunt.
Yeah.
Jesus. Yeah, well, they're just too polite to the people that I don't like. What are we fucking doing in this country? Might be witnessing the fucking last gasps for air from a failing empire. I mean, that is what this feels like in this moment, is that like people like him are just delusional about how far down we are.
So we kind of keep weaving in and out of it, but to then nail down harder the consequences of all this. By the time he decided to tell the truth about Biden, the damage was so far gone, way too late. Damage to the party, to the public's trust. It was irreparable. He was holding the door for Trump. He, his refusal to report on Biden and his decline, led to this landslide defeat. Was it at least one crucial
there were many factors,
role of this. There are many factors, but this was a pretty sizable one, just like Debbie Wasserman Schultz. That debate he co-moderated at the time that we were talking about. It was too late for a meaningful primary. The party was like forced into a last minute swap that voters ultimately rejected, and we didn't vote for. And
no one wants fucking Kamala Harris.
No,
we didn't want her on the fucking. We didn't want her as the vice president. No one voted for her in the primary before in 2020. No one wanted her. That's why she was polling like 2%.
It will probably go down in history as probably one of the worst nominations.
She was nominated by the party. She wasn't even nominated by the voter.
Exactly.
What do they call it? She was fucking anointed. She wasn't even voted in. There was no democratic process that allowed us to choose a presidential candidate in 2024. There was none. They almost force-fed us Biden for a second time after force-feeding us him the first time. No one wanted him before. He wasn't winning in the polls in 2020. He was like competitive, but he wasn't winning against Sanders until Buttigieg, Klobuchar, Booker, and Harris all dropped out at the same time, and maybe another candidate. They all dropped out at the same time because Barack Obama and other Democratic leadership positions were calling around saying, listen, if you want a future in the Democratic Party, you will not run against Joe Biden. I promise you that. If you want to run against Joe Biden, go for it, but you have no future in this party. Or you drop out now, and when he gets elected, you get a VP spot, a Secretary of Transportation spot, Secretary of this, Secretary of that, whatever it is. Like, you get a spot in the cabinet if you drop out. Then he started winning. So even then we had them putting their thumb on the scale, getting who they thought would be the easiest for them to contain ideologically from a donor and national politics standpoint. They're not a legislative body. They're a political body, and they make their decisions based on politics. They do not make their decisions based on like what's best for the country or what's best for the American people, obviously. And this is after they put their thumb on the scales. Debbie Wasserman Schultz is who we've covered first in Profiles of Cowardice for the same fucking reason. These people are impacting elections with their cowardice, with their lack of moral character, with their lack of ethics or lack of ability to stick to their ethical compass. They have zero fortitude when it comes to fighting against Republicans. All they care about is, are the donors happy and can we potentially win numbers wise an election? Not who do the voters want, not how do we appeal to more voters, who calculated wise can we put through that will do our bidding in the future. Mm-hmm. That is it. We saw Debbie Wasserman Schultz completely ruin our electoral system in 2016 by snubbing one of the more popular candidates and thus pushing a bunch of his voters away by doing it in a nefarious way rather than just beating him fairly. If they would have just beat Bernie Sanders, which they probably would have fairly in the primary, Hillary Clinton would have won. But they instead chose to push away voters and push away supporters of him. And who did those guys end up going to?
In their greed, they prioritized, in their decision, they prioritized somebody that could possibly beat Trump that they can control over somebody that will 100% beat Trump that they can't control.
Yes, exactly.
That was never a possibility. So by them clinging on, clutching this idea that we need to put somebody that'll like that we can kind of keep this show rolling on their end, played a huge role in all this. But this whole 180 from Tapper's reporting, gives direct ammunition to this whole fake news narrative. And that, if the media's top anchors admit that they hid president's conditions until after the election, prove that the media establishment collusion isn't like a conspiracy theory, that it's practically a business model that, honestly has been around.
And that's been part of the problem with the fake news comment is fascist. Turning the media into the enemy of the state or into the enemy of the people and a product of the state is fascism. It is authoritarian 101. That's like you get in the class, the fucking professor, the authoritarian professor is like, hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. Today we're starting off with the media. But the problem with a lot of these things that the Republicans have done in their creep into authoritarianism over the last 12 years or so has been taking the kernel of truth. It's like a joke. You take a kernel of truth and then you expand on that kernel of truth with nothing but bullshit. But every time somebody questions you on the bullshit, you check back to the kernel of truth. So you're telling me the media is great. You're telling me Jake Tapper didn't cover up Biden's decline. It doesn't matter what you're talking about in reference to the media being corrupt. If they have that to point back to, they're going to sway people to their side of the aisle. You know what I mean? You're giving them so much ammunition. And you have Fox News counter-programming these things in such a way that they actually gain enough legitimacy to the opposite side of the spectrum to where any of these arguments, they can always check back to a kernel of truth, but wrapped in, a circle of bullshit. And it's incessant. And so they gave them ammunition during the Biden administration. The media gave them ammunition during COVID. The media gave them ammunition during the first Trump administration, even by not being hard-nosed real journalists and being these softy puss boys that couldn't fucking criticize. They didn't call Trump a liar until like 2018. They were like, these are half-truths. These are mistruths. These are lacks context, lacks evidence. They wouldn't just say he's fucking lying. And so we all had to watch and say like, wow, maybe maybe they are fake. They can't even say he's lying when he's telling overt, verifiable lies. They can't call him ignorant when he doesn't know what he's talking about. They refused to participate genuinely. And so that was the kernel of truth that the right wing needed to lock in. I mean, same thing with the Democratic Party. The Democratic Party constantly gives the right wing ammunition against them. Yeah, you're saying that a vote for Trump is a vote against democracy. You didn't even get to elect your presidential candidate. How are you going to say we're anti-democracy? That's the kernel of truth they needed, which obviously they're way more anti-democracy than any party, any group of
Right.
Americans has been in a very long time. It doesn't matter when you give them enough ammunition to use against you. And that's what the Democrats and the media continually do. That's what this series is about that we're doing, this Profiles in Cowardice. Jake Tapper could be the most well-intentioned dumbass on planet Earth. I don't think he is, but he could be the most well-intentioned dumbass on planet Earth. Imagine everything he said in this book and all of the beliefs he espoused during the Biden administration. Imagine he's telling the truth. He's still a tool. He's just a guy reloading the gun for the Republicans. That's all he is.
So to put more stock into some of the stuff that we're talking about, let's get into sort of the financial interests in corporate placating, that this stems from.
Advertisement dollars, yeah.
Journalism is you're supposed to follow the money. When it comes to Jake Tapper, that's the lead. I don't understand why he stayed quiet. Like this, you have to look at his bosses, his sources, and his brand. So number one, so like CNN's new leadership, forced to shift towards centrism, incentivizing Tapper to stop protecting the Biden administration to keep his job.
Not centrism. They forced a shift towards that Overton window that I was telling you about.
Yes.
Which the Republicans had dragged to the right. So now CNN has said, well, the Overton window has been dragged to the right by the Republicans. That's where we're going to go and live.
Yes.
Instead of staying close to the middle, which is where they were before, which I would say they were even still already to the right before.
Sure. Yeah.
They've been dragged even further to the right. So this Overton window has been pulled so far from centrism. But point taken.
The evidence of this under Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav, CNN underwent a massive rebrand to appeal to GOP viewers. High profile anchors like Chris Licht and Brian Stelter were ousted for being too partisan. Tapper adapted to this new sort of mandate by pivoting from Biden's defender to now like his loudest critic, and the political winds have shifted all of a sudden. Let's talk about donors. Tapper avoided investigating the money behind Biden's inner circle to protect his own network of elite DC sources. While Tapper now calls out the Biden White House a politburo that engaged in gaslighting, he remained silent while top aides like Mike Donnellan were reportedly making millions to keep the campaign running despite Biden's condition.
Jail.
Yeah.
Fucking jail, dude. Goddamn jail. God damn it. Fuck the goddamn motherfuckers, man. This motherfucker is going to send his kids through college on the fact that he essentially helped Trump get reelected. And there's going to be no consequences for him. There's going to be no consequences for Wasserman Schultz. There's going to be no consequences for Tapper. These motherfuckers are just going to have happy lives sending their kids to college while the poorest people in this country continue to suffer at the hands of the authoritarian near dictatorship that we live in now. We are nearing a dictatorship.
Let's we'll sort of wind this down to have a conclusion. Let me throw out some
before I have a fucking aneurysm.
Let's end this with a few important highlights. Jake Tapper, he is the ultimate access merchant, a man who prioritizes his seat at the table over the survival of the party he claimed to be fairly covering. The original sin of Tapper's silence effectively killed the credibility of the mainstream media for a generation. In a Greek tragedy, the protagonist, his effort to avoid his fate is what seals his fate. In 2024, Jake Tapper didn't just report on the tragedy. He helped write the script by keeping the curtain closed until he could sell the tickets to the reveal. People like him
need
to be held accountable.
Yes.
He needs to be held accountable, and this is just the beginning. This is just episode 2. We got a lot more to talk about. Any final words on Jake Tapper?
Fuck Jake Tapper. Fuck the horse he rode in on. I hope he genuinely, I don't see how there are not crimes committed. I don't understand how, if you are participating, if this guy is making, if Joe Biden's aides are making millions of dollars to cover up the incompetence and inability of the president to do their job, I don't understand how they're not in a violation of the Constitution. And if you, as a journalist with journalistic ethics and integrity on the line, don't report that to the American people while it's happening, or in a timely enough manner for us to have accountability, I don't understand how you're not complicit. If these people don't belong in an actual physical prison cell, they belong in a type of social purgatory. There's no place in our society for journalists like Jake Tapper. Obviously, there's no place in our society for OAN, Fox News, and Newsmax, but those places are not taken, they don't even take themselves seriously. Jake Tapper is presenting himself as a serious journalist and is essentially trying to pull the wool over the American people's eyes through his misrepresentation of the facts. And then post hoc, he wants to go and revitalize his image on certain issues after the fact. Once the problem is gone, he tells the truth. That is spineless, yellow-bellied, pussy behavior. And I fucking hate Jake Tapper.
There's a reason why a lot of people, a lot of regular citizens are tilting a lot harder into independent media because a lot of these mainstream sources are constantly lying and gaslighting and selling us a shitty bill of goods, and people are tired of it. And, people like Don Lemon are trying to capitalize on that by going out and becoming their own independent media source.
And look where, great point, because look where media ends up. This is Jake Tapper understands this as well. He understands that not playing ball with the Trump administration ends in the Trump administration or his lawyers personally will sue you for mischaracterizing or saying something that they view as inflammatory or defamatory or whatever it is. They'll sue your company to try and get you fired or get you to lose revenue as a company.
Right.
Or now what we're seeing is we'll just arrest you. This is the type of shit that Jake Tapper, being a fucking professional journalist and being an American human being that has presumably read the Constitution and has presumably learned a little bit about history, world and US alike, should have understood. Anybody with half a fucking brain saw this coming. You don't say in 2017 that the media is the enemy of the people without ending up jailing and killing journalists.
Mm-hmm.
And Jake Tapper, I promise you, if we go back to 2017 and somebody says, well, he's saying that the media is the enemy of all people, you'd find some fucking limp dick dude like Jake Tapper on there saying, yeah, well, it's just inflammatory language. I mean, that's a big claim. You think he wants to jail journalists or censor media like fucking comedians Jimmy Kimmel and shit. He can't do that. Jake Tappers of the world are the exact ones that would say shit like that. And now in this administration, we see them, first of all, taking over media companies by having yes men and political allies inserted into positions of power, suing the balls off of media organizations that don't cover things the way that that the state wants them covered, jailing journalists, ruining journalists' lives, suing small journalists that can't afford the lawsuits into being quiet. Like this, not only will they be attempting to silence people, but now they're actually jailing journalists. They just jailed 4 journalists for not even participating, but for being a part of and covering a protest. A protest that may have gone too far, I don't know, but journalists can cover protests that do go too far.
Yeah.
So like Jake Tapper is why Don Lemon got arrested. You know what I mean? Is like Jake Tapper's exact brand of cowardice is why Don Lemon is arrested. And listen,
exactly, yeah.
Like I told you privately, fuck Don Lemon. For all the same exact reasons we just said fuck Jake Tapper, you could go back on half a dozen issues in the last 5 to 10 years that Don Lemon was a limp-dicked coward about too. And tell the same story we just told about Jake Tapper about Don Lemon on several other issues. But Don Lemon doesn't deserve to be in jail right now.
Right.
If he does, it's probably not for what he's in jail for. You know what I mean? What they're doing is they arrest him so that they can, investigate him or turn his life upside down or raid his house or whatever it is. They do these things to silence people, to cool down the temperature on the regular person. Says, okay, well, if they're arresting Don Lemon, what am I going to do if they arrest me? I'm fucked. And we cannot live in a society where we allow them to intimidate people into silence. That is why we're doing this podcast. That is why we're trying to self-police our own side of the political spectrum as we interpret it, because without this self-policing, you end up getting policed by the right. And if we can't police ourselves, we can't then police the right. We will never be able to hold them accountable for their crimes against the law. We will never be able to hold them accountable for their crimes against the Constitution. Some of them have crimes against humanity that they need to answer for. We can never do that until we are a united front when it comes to who do we allow into our own side of the political spectrum. If they want to keep dragging the Overton window to the right, they can. Our own personal set of beliefs exist where they exist on the political spectrum, and they will not shift. And so if you want to be like CNN and follow the Overton window over into right-wing extremism, go for it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to criticize anyone who claims to be on my side of the political spectrum, anyone who claims to care about the world, to care about humanity, to care about our country. I'm going to criticize them into behaving accordingly. You don't just get to say these things. You have to participate in our democracy. You have to follow our Constitution in a way that reflects your personal claims. And until people start saying, okay, well, you want to be like CNN, go be like CNN over there. We will formulate our own coalition of like-minded individuals here. Until we can do that, we will continue losing elections. We have to accept that the Democratic Party is essentially has been taken over by corporations. We have to accept the fact that there is no working with Republicans until they come back to sanity. There's no working with them. Everything has to be working against them. Every gear has to be grinded to a halt. Every wheel cannot get oiled. Every single bit of sabotage politically that we can do, we must do. We have to slow them down. We have to stop them. But we can't do that if people like Jake Tapper are fucking gaslighting us when our own leaders are filling diapers up. And while their henchmen are making political and legislative decisions on their behalf, while they drool into their own lap.
Yeah, we can't exactly defuse a bomb when our tools are falling apart, and then also the guy next to you is
telling you it's
getting
not a
you
bomb.
yeah, it's not a bomb. We're fine.
This is a microwave.
You don't have
and
to
it's
cut
like
that
counting
wire
down. Jake Tapper's like, this isn't a bomb. What are you talking about? And then after the fact, he's like, I tried to tell them to defuse the bomb.
Yeah.
Fuck you, Jake Tapper, you fucking cunt.
After he runs away with his golden parachute.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. After he's actually going to get out of the building with millions of dollars.
Yeah.
Imagine best case scenario, things only get a little bit worse. That's not what's going to happen, but things are going to get way worse. But imagine things just get a little bit worse. Imagine more protesters get killed. Imagine more people lose their houses. Imagine more people can't afford houses. Imagine more people can't afford groceries. Just imagine things just inch in the worst direction. Do you think Jake Tapper or his family is ever going to suffer from any of that? Of course not. Of course not. They're going to have their nice dinners with their Republican colleagues or with their fellow Democratic colleagues. They're going to put their kids through college. They're going to get good educations. They're going to get good jobs. There's going to be no accountability. No one's going to jail. None of it. So they are not as invested in the future of our country as normal people like you and I should be. Because I am impacted by the price of groceries. I am impacted by the price of goods and imports and lumber and tools and, things that are made everywhere else. Like I'm impacted by all of this. I have a vested interest in the future of this country. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to see things get a little bit worse. I want to see them get dramatically better. And people like Jake Tapper understand that there's way more money in reporting on things getting a little bit worse than there is in, everything's better now. If it bleeds, it leads. And if nothing's bleeding, nothing's leading. And these people know that. They saw the second Trump administration as a fucking gold mine. And they're in there with their pickaxes picking away. That's all. He's like, oh, okay. Imagine if Harris had won. What book do you think he would have come out with if Harris won?
Yeah.
Like, I promise you it wouldn't have been the same book.
No.
I promise you he would not have put that book out if Harris won. Because he has no moral clarity. He has no spine as a journalist.